Welcome to our new episode of Speak Revenue. Remember, revenue is not a goal, it's a result. But a result of what? This show, in this show, we turn our eyes from the output towards the input. We speak to sales and revenue leaders and entrepreneurs about their journeys. Join us on our quest to uncover and learn the root causes of success. Let's unpack what works for them and what didn't. Today, with my guest, Rolly Keenan. Rolly, so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining my show.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. For our audience, our introduction, real quick. Who are you? What do you do? And why are you so successful?
Thanks. So who am I? I'm born and raised in Texas. Got my degree at University of North Texas in Dallas. Got my MBA at Kellogg in Chicago in marketing. I started in pro sports. Quickly moved into technology. Did a decade of that. Did a decade in management consulting. And for the last 6 years or so, I've been a fractional CRO.
And you work for?
And I work for Tegrita. I'm a CRO for Tegrita. We're basically a digital marketing consulting firm. And what was the third question?
Why is Tegrita so successful and how you contribute to that?
Tegrita occupies, there's a couple of elements to it, a couple of layers. One is they do some things technically that most firms can't do. So they're really valuable. They're things that most organizations can't do without. So that helps. Secondly, we focus on, and I can be way less vague than this in later on, but we focus on our people because those are the experts. And so we do a ton of things that are very specific to people in the business to keep them going. Mm-hmm. And as a CRO, I brought that as a key part of practical things that I do in the business are very people centered.
So would you say that people culture is the key to success for Tegrita?
I don't know if I call it culture because that tends to hit on some definitions that I don't like. People think of culture in some ways. I'd say more like, how do you organize people's roles so that they love coming to work? They are doing what they do best every day. How do you do that? It's very people-centric versus I need these outputs, give them to me.
Is there a connection between your history in sports and running teams now?
Personally, there is, because I have a big interest in developing people. And that was a big part of coaching and sports for me. I was a coach with the Olympic volleyball teams. I coach in college for volleyball while I was playing. I was doing both. So yeah, for me, there's a connection there for sure.
Interesting. You mentioned there is a technology that only you have and nobody else. Shed us some light on this.
Yeah, what I meant to say was we technically have some skills and abilities that most people don't have. In other words, the way someone in revenue, whether it's marketing or sales, the way someone might tackle a technical issue in order to work in their CRM or work in their marketing automation tool or some other ancillary tool, the way they might go about it, it would be super inefficient. And a lot of times those are the projects that we jump into where they are about to spend $100,000 on a project. And then they talk to us for 5 minutes and we explain it'll be $6,000 because we know how to do it.
Painful conversation.
Yeah. Well, and a lot they'll balk, right? They'll be, well, how could that be possible? But yeah, there's some technical things that we do that are just people just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. Now I know because I always have a conversation before the podcast with the guest. And in that conversation, you said something that stuck with me. You said everything feeds into email and email feeds into everything. And I sense there is a connection between the special skills that you and your team and technology that you have and email as a centerpiece. Talk to me more about this.
Yeah, your sensing is correct. Essentially, when you think of email, you think of email marketing and sending emails. right? And the reality is that at the center is this person's email. In other words, like that's their address in the world is this email address. And it hasn't changed, and it's been tried in different ways to kind of go around it, start texting people or whatever. But those just have become ancillary ways. The center of the universe is still that email address. And so if most marketers that I come in contact with have basically pushed it aside and say, I have my lowest level person handling that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Of course, as consumers, we all know it mostly doesn't work. We get emails that don't apply to us and all that stuff. But reality is, if you do it well, it's a huge ROI. It's still the largest ROI of any tool that you use in terms of getting sales in return for what you're doing. But it, like you said, it feeds the other way. It's like a 300, everything comes to email, and email should inform everything else. So if all the things around it, whether all the demand gen work and advertising and all these things, eventually you're going to have to email somebody once they decide they want to do business with you.
Yeah.
And if you're running campaigns through that, if you do it well, you'll also find brand new segments of customers, which means you should change how you're advertising or change this. So it comes to email, and also email should inform everything else that you're doing all the time, not just at the end of the year or something, but you should have a cadence where you check it.
And do I get that right? If I deal with a high volume of prospects and customers, and at the centerpiece of this communication, there is this old technology that is older than the web. Actually, what is it now? 50 years old, 82? RFC 822 was 1982, I believe, 1983 or something.
Yeah, right.
So that 40 years. Yeah. This is the centerpiece, old technology. Everything is lateral and around it. If I want to get this working, what seems so simple becomes very complex. How do I know it's becoming complex, so complex that I need to call Rolly? What are the symptoms?
Well, it's an interesting question because most of the time that's difficult to come around to for executives because they're so used to working around it that they think that what we're doing is impossible. So it's hard for them to come to that. They're like, oh yeah, I talked to Sarah recently who said, I just stopped doing email. I'm like, what does that mean? And he was like, why bother? I can't figure it out. I don't have time. And I've committed to, it's a private equity fund and business. I've committed to the board that I'm going to spend X dollars on ads. And so they don't care who gets the email, and they don't understand that just because I'm emailing 1 million people and only 100,000 are even getting it, they don't know that because they see the report that I sent 1 million. So they think 1 million people got it and they're happy. Mm. So
how do I know that 900,000 didn't get it?
You wouldn't if you didn't have the right tools. If you're looking at most marketing automation platforms, it looks like they all made it. They really didn't.
So is your first step doing an audit? What percentage does even arrive? And we're probably talking spam filters and secondary inboxes and things like this.
Right. Yeah. These firms have a Fortune 1000. They all have it. They have software that opens your email and clicks on everything. So you're getting this report that, oh my God, they love our emails. They're opening all of them. And it looks like they love this link. They love the man, like we're really hitting a home run here, and really no one's even saw it. But it's hard to know that if you don't have the right tech. And like you and I were talking before, most heads of revenue, whether it's marketing or sales, don't have the tech for it. So they have no idea. And when I ask them, the most informed ones, they say, I know, but it's okay. No one knows. Like no one that I work for knows either. Yeah. So it's cool. Like I know that my stuff's not getting there, but you can't prove it with my current tools. And so nobody can be mad at me for that. I'm doing what I...
That's a beautiful segue to how you get customers. But before I ask you how you get customers for your service and technology, how do you talk about something that can get your prospect fired if they admit it?
That's a practically a impossible task, because ultimately you have to not sell to them. For the most part, you have to sell to the board, you have to sell to the CEO. And then every now and then, I call it finding intelligent life. Every now and then you find intelligent life, somebody who doesn't care if they're making mistakes, they want to fix it.
Yeah.
And so they're not afraid of that conversation, but that's pretty rare. And so most of the time we're selling around them.
So step me through your sales process. And I feel a little bit like in the Inception movie. Are you sending out cold emails?
No.
No. Okay. There are two ways of doing. There are four ways of telling people about your offer. You can do one-to-one, and you can do one-to-many, and you can talk to people who know you and people who don't know you. In which quadrant do you belong?
We mostly talk to people who know us because a majority of our know us. Most of our business comes from referral. So we just answer emails of somebody going, hey, I heard you're the only one that can fix it, that kind of thing. And then we turn those into larger engagements. We fix one thing, but then once we're in there, we see some problems, we start pointing them out, and then they bring us on slowly. And that's how most of our biggest clients started, was just, we heard you could fix this.
That sounds a little bit like content marketing, educating people about the things that need fixing.
Yeah.
What is your strategy there?
Yeah, so we definitely do a lot of content. If I feel like that's kind of broad, but specifically we have a podcast that we do weekly, a live podcast. We have expectations of our top consultants to create content. We have a whole plan for them every year of things that they're an expert in, that we want them to write about. And we put that up, and people find us. Like just yesterday, someone found us for something we wrote 2 years ago. So yeah, we do a lot of attraction. And then the strategists, which is about as close as we get to sales, the strategists on our team look for, I'm going to say this in an entertaining way on purpose, we look for fights to pick on LinkedIn.
Oh, interesting.
So we jump around for people who most marketers are watching. And when they say something that we feel like we have a point of view on, we'll jump in and comment. And then 30 chief marketing officers will look at my profile if I do that.
Yeah.
So we try to, and so we're not hard selling or cold calling or anything like that, but we're trying to be relevant.
But making sure that the number of people who know you become bigger as you go.
Yes.
Now, you said before, everything feeds into email, and email feeds into everything. And I'm going to steal this and use this for the rest of my life, because it's going to be true for the rest of my life. How do you feed those LinkedIn conversations into email? They look at you, you pick a controversial position, you're in this comment thread, people look up your profile, what happens next?
It's too simple to be interesting, but it really just goes two ways. Either once they look at my profile, they show up and fill out a form on my website. Like pretty much that's most of it. And then I'd say 25% of it is that they'll direct message me, and then I set up a call, and then we start our sales process at that point.
Is it a simple contact form, or do you make use of any type of lead magnet, giving away something for free, additional resources?
No, just your most boring contact me form. What we do when it happens, though, and like we just did yesterday, because it's not happening. We're not a giant volume firm, so it's not happening 100 times a day. We look at and share across the revenue team the path. What did they click on first, second, third? How did they get to the contact form? So we do look at that and take that into account when we meet about how we're doing content and how we're redesigning the site right now. So,
but is it anecdotal information, or do you keep track of those paths? And in what?
We keep track of it in just essentially like a spreadsheet because again, the volume is very low. We couldn't handle a lot of volume if we're limited by how many people work for us. But yeah, we track what's the path, and we're real happy this year that our path has been super consistent. Like people are clicking the exact same path like every time.
How did you get
So
there?
they can do
Like,
like
how did you get there? It sounds like it wasn't always like this.
no, it was a lot of trial and error, and it's my favorite. It's my favorite way to find out answers, which is we just experimented a bunch. We tried to bring people to one page first, and we put money into like trying to get people to a certain landing page that would naturally bring them somewhere else, and we tried all kinds of stuff. And really, what's happening that at least we can tell. So there's some dark social stuff that probably is happening that I can't and don't have the budget to go figure out. But people eventually start in some content somewhere, and they go straight from whatever that blog post was 3 years ago or whatever. They go straight from there to our homepage, to what services. That's always the second one or the next one after home. And then how do I become a client, or I forget the wording on the website, become a client and then contact us. I'm pretty consistent now, but you're right. It was not that way. We experimented a lot, the website hasn't changed, but we've experimented in the way that we pushed people. And it seems like, I guess it seems like what's happened is it's just the fact that we've done 5 years consistently creating content that now people are just constantly finding it on a very regular basis. They're landing on our content.
In terms of blog articles, what are we talking about? Hundreds, thousands?
Hundreds. Yeah.
Oh.
Not thousands.
Interesting. Did you learn that if they follow the buyer journey in a certain order, that this impacts the closing rate? Like, do you need to educate them in a certain order before you have the first conversation so that your chances are becoming better?
We don't know that yet. And because of the kind of business we're in, so we're in many ways, everything's custom. Mm-hmm. So because of the kind of work that we do, once they show up to me, there's 3 steps. Once they show up to me, I dig around, is this even somebody we should spend time with? Are they just fishing with me, or do they have something real? So I'm almost always, as a CRO, that first conversation. Second is the client knows this from the beginning. Second, we scope everything. That means, what's this? What's that? What's this? We take in information for 30 minutes. And then on the third call, we present a full-on scope. An hour for this, half hour for this, 7 hours for this, 20 hours, and come up with $100,000 project. But they can see every single thing that we're doing, the hourly rate, they see it all. So because of how that process works and because it's so custom, I'm not sure, even though we're tracking it and we may be able to answer that at one point, I'm not sure if the sequence leading up is necessarily going to affect close rate as much as those other 3 things that we do that's more hand-to-hand, one-to-one combat.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You said project size can be 6 digits. Is that correct?
Sure.
How long is your sales cycle?
We're always trying for 21 days. Oh. And I would say that we're probably still a little over 30.
Okay. I get that.
I say 21 because that's how we structure our process. Is our goal from those 3 calls is 7 days apart. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I should say that differently. In terms of close, it can be variable based on the size of our client. If they're a big client, it takes forever. If they're small, it's fast. Mm-hmm. But from 0 to we have a contract that they're ready to sign, we want that to be 21. And we're closer to 30. Because that we want 7 days between each step and just try to move them through.
I think you mentioned HubSpot before. Step me a little bit through your tech stack. Any secret tools that you're using to run your LinkedIn operations?
No, we have some interesting little tools that we use. We use Uberflip for our content, which I know we've talked about content a lot on this call. We have Eloqua because we were born as an Eloqua consultancy. And so we've always had Eloqua as our base marketing automation platform. We added HubSpot for two reasons. One, because we thought there was an opportunity to just be capable with HubSpot. HubSpot was growing fast. Eloqua has been shrinking every year for the past 6 years. So we're like, we don't want to duct tape ourselves to that sinking ship. And also HubSpot is great for inbound work. And so we actually work, as you might imagine, highly technical. So we have no problem running two automation platforms at the same time. Is how we do it. Yeah. So Eloqua is more for current clients and HubSpot's more for inbound work.
How do you manage your content calendars and your content planning?
We don't use any special tools for that outside of a process tool, which is Agile. So we basically run Agile for our marketing efforts. And instead of daily stand-ups like a software development process might go, we do weekly stand-ups and refer to it all the time. So in look backs and look forwards, we're always pulling up a Kanban and just seeing where we're at, what's on the backlog, what's in motion. So we use Agile for how we keep those calendars and pieces of content moving.
Have you met any resistance from your team in, I ain't gonna write LinkedIn posts again?
Yeah.
And how did you break through this?
Yeah, it's a real human problem.
It is.
Because when we started this 5 years ago, it was like very aspirational, but people aren't following through and they're just not doing it. And so slowly over time, and I don't remember exactly when it got codified, but it became part of the job. And you're failing at your job if you're not doing this. We're not just asking you to do it, but when we talk about your job, that's a big fat zero. And then, of course, we've hired people since then. And so when they're hired, they understand these are your expectations. We use, this is the wording here is big for me. We use core contributions, not core competencies, because I don't like saying someone's incompetent. So there's a core contributions across the firm of what's expected of you. And then there are specific things to your role. And at certain levels, you're expected to produce content.
Would it be fair to say that? Would it be fair to say that apart from sales quota, you created a content quota?
Yeah.
That's an interesting, I've never heard that before. That's an interesting approach. Listen, Rolly.
Yeah, you can hire people for that, right? People that are proud of their expertise. So you can select for that in the end. You're stuck with who you got when you started, but you can select for it.
Yeah. If I would have a time machine in which I can send a message to the 5-year younger Rolly with a sticky note, don't do this, Rolly. What would it be? What did you do in the last 5 years that you wish you wouldn't, or you wish you would have done differently?
I think the first one is like a glaring mistake that I've made over the years, which is I stopped a couple years ago, but is trying to blend, hey, we can make money by capturing a particular technical tool that we want our clients to use, and we'll take 10% commission for basically selling that into our client. So I thought that was a brilliant idea, and I worked really hard on it. And there's some good things that came out of that hard work, but what never came out of it was revenue. So that was a big mistake in terms of like time and effort, I think. And then secondly, I would say more broadly is some people side of stuff is I feel like most of the stuff that we've done in the last 5 years, I pretty much knew it 5 years ago. And I think I spread out those efforts too much. And I probably should have pushed a lot harder early and got them done earlier, and we'd be further ahead now. I was just a little too like gun shy. Let's not do 7 things. Let's just do one and then do another. In hindsight, 2020, maybe it wouldn't have worked and I did it. But I feel like most of the things, even things that we were put in progress in the last year I could have done 5 years ago.
Nice. So do more. Is that a lesson? Do more and tell your own stuff.
Follow your gut. Yeah, follow your gut. Like, I feel like I knew it.
Yeah.
And I think some of it was, but let's do this first and see how that plays out. And then I think I just delayed. So don't delay if you feel like it's worthwhile, because spreading it out, kind of like motor learning. I'm a former coach in sports. So motor learning has this rule, which is people like to break things up in sequences about a sport. Like, first, if this move in spiking a volleyball, I've got to jump, I've got to pull my arm back, then I've got to follow through, and so they break it apart, but that's not how the body works. So don't bother. Just throw the ball up in there and tell somebody to go hit it, and then fix the whole thing, not parts of it. The only time you break it up is if it's dangerous, like diving. You should break that up because you might get hurt. But that's the same thing, I think, for a lot of these things in business. Is like, if there's really no reason to break it up, if there's no danger, don't break it up. Just do it.
I can totally relate. I'm a skiing instructor. I learned the same things. So yeah, observe, analyze, and improve. All right, everyone. That brings us to the end of this episode of Speak Revenue. I want to thank our guest, Rolly, and for joining us today and sharing these valuable insights. Huge shout out to all our listeners. Your support means the world to us. Remember to check our website at speakrevenue.com for a full transcript and additional resources. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you go for your listening needs. It really helps to get the word out. Also follow us on LinkedIn, Insta, and since yesterday on YouTube. We'll be back soon with another great guest. Until then, stay curious, keep listening, and stay safe. Talk to you soon.